Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out today, despite the warnings of rain. Let me begin today's ceremony by inviting up the Reverend David Lima for an opening prayer. Reverend Lima.
I'd like to read a prayer that was read by the chaplain, Colonel Jack Poe of the Oklahoma City Police Department at the memorial service in New York City, where all of this took place. On September 11th, your city took center stage as the world witnessed an act of war launched against this great nation. We are standing on the memorial site that contains the names of officers of the New York City Police Department that have lost their lives in the line of duty. I have watched closely and listened carefully as many officers came and touched a special name on this granite wall. Each officer recalls a special memory of that special person they hold close to their hearts. Memory is good, but without memory there is no healing. Behind us in the harbor stands the Statue of Liberty. Her torch has never shined as bright as it has these past days as she stands guard over this rescue and recovery operation. She has a message for all who think our nation is weak and divided. We are not. From coast to coast and from border to border, the American people stand shoulder to shoulder, united and strong, with a steadfast resolve to see you through. This was not just an attack on a city or a nation, it was an assault on humanity. The human spirit, though blindsided, did not break. What was intended to bring us down has instead awakened a sleeping giant. In 1 John 4:4, we are reminded that the Spirit of God within us is greater than the evil in the world. You could have given up, but that was never your choice. Without regard to their own personal safety, your peers in the police and fire service responded by moving others from harm's way. The cost was high, and we are gathered here now to honor them. No one has greater love than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends, from John 15:13. We in Oklahoma City know firsthand your pain and loss. Not only are our prayers and thoughts with you, but also those of all Americans. New York City is now not just a name on a map, it has a place in the hearts of the American people. At a memorial service held to honor the officers of the Muncie, Indiana Police Department who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, Ray Boltz, a songwriter, heard me share my experiences from the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma. There I said, we must never forget the great price paid every day by those in public safety that make the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and safety. Inspired by that service, he wrote the song, Fallen But Not Forgotten. Let me close with these words from that song. Fallen but not forgotten, these are the heroes that stand so tall, and forever we will remember, with honor and glory, they gave their all. May God bless our fallen heroes. May God bless America.
Thank you, Reverend Lima. As we gather here to mark a day that touched our lives as none in our lifetimes ever have, it's entirely fitting and appropriate that we invite up someone in whom we are so proud in so many ways to sing the national anthem. And that's New Bedford's own Samantha Johnson. Samantha. Just to correct the record, it's God Bless America that Samantha will be singing today. Either way, Samantha, as she always does, will never disappoint. Samantha.
Thank you.
Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light.
Wow. I think she's going to be good someday. Before I offer a couple of remarks, I want to recognize the public officials in attendance today and thank all of them for appearing here on a very important occasion. Let me begin with City Council President Brian Gomes. You can applaud after each name. Naomi Carney, City Councilor at Large. Ward 2, City Councilor Steve Martins. I saw Jim Oliveira, Ward 1 Councilor. Where's Jim? We recognize our Portuguese Consul, Pedro Canero. Former Mayor of the City of New Bedford, Fred Kalitz. And on a day when we honor and pay tribute to our first responders, let me recognize also the gentleman to my right, Chief Michael Gomes of our fire department. Our EMS Director, Mark McGraw. Our Police Chief, David Preventure. Deputy Police Chief David Lizotte. Our Director of Veterans Services and Army Combat Veteran of Iraq, Christopher Gomes. We are some now 14 years removed from the day for those of us old enough to have been there when our lives were all changed. A day when we remember vividly where we were, whom we were with, and what our initial thoughts were, our initial reactions were to the attacks on the United States. And in the passage of 14 years, I've heard some folks say, with all good intentions, do you have ceremonies like this? Do you spend time remembering? Or should you simply just mark the day with a moment of silence? And I firmly believe that, for those of us who are of a certain age, we will never forget that day, and that it is entirely fitting and appropriate that we take time out of our days at the same time of the attacks to remember not only those who suffered and those who died, but also those who came together, all of us who came together at that time to redouble our efforts as in the service of our nation, and for those who continue to serve our nation, whether in the military in the Middle East or around the world, war as first responders, firefighters, EMS, and police officers like those who responded to the attacks on 9/11. It is, in my view, entirely appropriate that we take time out, especially for those who don't remember that day. And in that way, I'm so pleased to see some of the high school students from the Global Learning Charter School who are here today, and thank their director, Executive Director Steve Furtado, for bringing them here today. I know for those adults among us, let's take stock of the fact that those young men and women right here were infants when the attack occurred. And it is frankly inappropriate for us today not necessarily to send them a lesson, but as a way of coming together, all of us Americans, to remember that day, not only for suffering, but to remember to refocus our attention on what it means to be an American, what it means to cherish freedom, what it means to serve the public. And that's what, frankly, these ceremonies for 9/11 should be about. It should be about honoring those who died and those who suffered, as is appropriate. Those are folks who going to work one day, just as we did this morning, just going to work, never thinking what would happen. and we also need to honor those who stepped up afterwards. There are a handful of events in American history when America has, as David Lima's recited prayer alluded to, when the sleeping giant of America woke up, Pearl Harbor, the attack on Fort Sumter, to name a couple. But 9/11 surely was one of those. And it was, for many of us, a reminder that we have to keep returning to as we move on, as folks, particularly our younger folks in the community, who are learning as a matter of history what happened on that day, to be reminded of the sacrifice and how that of so many, not just in New York and around the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania, but the sacrifice of so many afterwards, to sign up for the military, to serve folks in their community, to do all that is necessary to cherish our freedom as Americans. We honor in particular those who've served in the military and those who've died, those who fought on the battlefield, including Chris Gomes, who deserve our highest praise for their sacrifice. What we want to remember, what I hope we remember on 9/11 is how it brought out the best in people, how it made us step up, how it made us open our arms to others and to serve and to dedicate ourselves to a more perfect union in America. And that's something that we have to continually remind ourselves of, and that's why this ceremony is not only appropriate but absolutely necessary. And I thank every one of you for taking time out of your busy days and in the face of a threat of rain and other bad weather to be here today. Showing up to this really matters, and the fact that you came out here, some 500 people or so, really says volumes about the priorities of our community. New Bedford has it right. New Bedford is a deeply patriotic community. We come together for one another in ways that other communities can only envy. And so let's continue on in that spirit of serving one another and honoring our nation. At this time, I'm going to ask City Council President Brian Gomes to say a few words on behalf of the council. Brian.
How about a nice round of applause for Samantha Johnson? Did she bring it on? Did she make you feel like an American this morning? I know I did. We're here today to remember 9/11, and I remember exactly where I was, time. I remember Dr. O'Rourke in the OR seeing a tower had just been hit in New York City. We then made our way over to the Surgery Center lounge area where there was some TVs, and we started looking at the screen, only to see a second plane hit the next tower. And all of a sudden there was a feeling within that felt like something wrong. There wasn't an accident, something wrong had happened in our country, and we were under an attack. I know that this morning on the way here, I was listening to some music on WBSM in tribute to 9/11, and it kind of brought a tear to my eye because I know where I was, I know where I wanted to be, where most of us wanted to be. We wanted to be with our loved ones because we knew we were under attack. But as the mayor said, it brought us all together. It brought us together in a strong unity of a country that is very proud, and proud of its people, proud of the people who serve us, proud of itself. Today is a day of remembrance for those 3,000 lives that were lost, that touched all of us in some way, somehow. Today is a day of remembrance for those firefighters, police officers, EMS people who ran into that building with no concern of their lives, but the concern of the lives that were in that buildings, only many of them not to return. That's why we're here today. I would ask all of you today and in the next 24, 48 hours, when you see a firefighter, when you see a police officer, when you see an EMT, when you see a serviceman, you reach out to him and you say thank you. Thank you for your service, because they're the front line, and they were the front line that day, and they continue to be the front line each and every day. Before you leave here today, turn to someone to your right, left, behind you. Shake their hand and introduce yourself. Tell them I'm proud to be an American. and I'm proud to have met you. And may we take that back to our neighborhoods throughout the city and keep it in our hearts in remembrance of those who sacrificed for us on that day. Thank you very much for the opportunity. On behalf of Naomi Connie, Steve Martins, Jim Oliveira, the entire City Council, we stand united today as Americans. God bless you all.
Thank you, Councilor Gomes. And to close our ceremony today, let me ask David Lima to return to the podium for a closing prayer. David.
I want to make sure to echo what City Council President Brian Gomes said. You didn't come here just to see speeches, hear songs, or anything else, though those were wonderful. Well, the song was. Us speeches, we do what best we can. The fact of the matter is, we're here to remember people, not just that died in the towers, not just that died in a lonely field in Pennsylvania, not just that died in Pentagon, but especially the responders that while everybody was running away, was running in. Today, we want to remember because we don't always remember the things that we appreciate about our first responders, our police, our fire, our EMS, our soldiers. Something occurs and we start cursing them, we start blaming them, we start not thinking about them the way we should, until we remember that they're the ones that will run in when everyone's running away. I'm going to close with one more thing that Chaplain Jack Poe from the Oklahoma City Police Department closed with that day. It's called On the Jericho Road. Our ministry takes place on the Jericho Road. This is where people are beaten and robbed. Here they wonder if there is a God, and if there is, if God really cares. The only way they will know is if we take time to touch a life and make a difference. Many people have asked me where God was April 19th, 1995 at 9:02, the morning the Alfred P. Murrow Federal Building was bombed. I have said God was in the same place. He was at 9:01 a.m. and at 9:03 a.m. he was with us, not only in the promise of his presence, never to leave us or forsake us, but also in the presence of his people. Jesus, the Word who became flesh, continues to do what he did prior to this crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. He acts through his people, And whether you're Christian today or not, we are still a people of humanity. He acts through his people who take time to touch lives and help those who hurt. The Word becomes flesh, in the hugs, in the kind words of encouragement, in a cup of water, and in the many smiles. The light did shine in darkness, and the darkness could not comprehend it. On the Jericho roads of life, we need to help victims become survivors by qualifying ourselves for service, by focusing on what we can change instead of excusing ourselves from service on account of what we cannot change. We all bring something to the table. We can all do something to make a difference. Learn to finish what we start. Healing takes time. We must determine to stay. We honor our soldiers, but the one thing that doesn't get highlighted is that today, on a daily basis, on average, 22 veterans commit suicide because of the hopelessness they feel. That's today. That's our veterans who went to protect us so that we could stand in a public setting without any fear of any reprisal. And we need to involve others. We become part of a community. We acknowledge that we do not have all the resources or all the answers, but we know where they are and allow others to become part of the helping and healing process. Together, the city of New Bedford can make a difference. We can experience the reality of God's truth. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Lehman. That concludes our program today. Thank you again for coming. Thank you again for showing up. Let us go forward in service to our community and to our nation, inspired by those who responded on 9/11 and who have continued to respond on behalf of our nation in its wake. Thank you, everyone.